In a dark world filled with deceit, one united voice is crying out. Revealing the truth of God's Word. It's time to expose the hidden truth. And unravel the lies. While we're living beyond Satan's little season. With Sister Crystal and Brother Phil.
Welcome to Living Beyond Satan's Little Season show. We're your hosts,
Sister Crystal,
Brother Phil. The topic today, divorce and remarriage. A question from our audience.
Yes.
We're going to address a question, and I want you to know right now, if you have a question about any of the topics that we discuss on this show,
or anything in the Bible that you have not heard us discuss, or you have questions on it,
just get a hold of us. You know where we're at. You can email us, website, Satan's Little Season.
Beyond?
No, the website.
Okay.
SatansLittleSeason.org. You can go there, send us a message. You can get a hold of us there. No problem. We want to answer your questions. And so here we have one of our listeners that, because we've had a number, we did a big series on fornication, divorce and remarriage, concubines, and now we have a question about that.
Right.
Okay. Because this is a really important topic and I wanted to address all those. So we already did, but I knew that I didn't really talk about all the details that I wanted to get into. So now we're going to get into the real grit life scenarios that people are going through right now.
Right.
Because right now we live in a very dark age. We all understand that. And we're having so many problems with relationships and marriage. People don't even know what it is anymore. It's insane and crazy. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this question here. And we're going to read part of the question, and then we're going to discuss it as we go. But we're just going to go into the question here. Why don't you go ahead and read that?
So, question for Brother Phil.
Oh, and it'll be Sister Crystal, too.
And Sister
Even
Crystal.
though he just addressed me, we're going to answer it together. Okay, go ahead.
I stumbled upon this podcast on marriage and divorce. Quite mind-blowing. I am divorced and was nearly 2 decades ago. It was biblical from my position. Basically, my ex-wife apostated, left the church, started dating other men, so I obviously got divorced to end this abomination. Now, she's on her 4th husband, living thousands of miles away with kids, too.
Okay, so here's a situation where, I hate to say this is so common these days, where it's like people, and the problem is our society's so broken now. We don't really even know what a real intact biblical relationship is from the start. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we're gonna give a little detail about our relationship here, Sister Crystal, Brother Phil. We're the last. I call them we're like the last of the old guard here. Okay, because we did everything like the old way everybody did it. That's right. I mean, there's no sex before marriage.
So personally, we had convictions that were not like our siblings or handed down to us by our parents. It was our own personal convictions based on what we felt the Bible taught and the Spirit leading us to do.
Yeah, so we, like to say, I dated, back in that time when you dated other people, or at least in my view, is like you were just getting to know them.
It was innocent.
Yeah, you weren't having sex with, the person you dated. Now you say, I'm dating somebody, they assume, oh, you're sleeping with them. Right. When that wasn't the way dating worked back in the 90s and 80s when, I was growing up. That's what's happened now.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to know him. I don't think you're right for me. And there was no sexual relationship involved. It's just getting to know them.
Right.
And the same is true with Crystal here. She did the same thing, you know, had some boyfriends, but, you know, they weren't, you know, you want to find out if you're compatible or not. You know, you find out, oh, we don't mesh and everything. Things aren't working out exactly.
Right.
And that's kind of how we did it back in those days. But we didn't never slept with anybody. And then when we finally did meet, you know, right there, you know, we didn't sleep together.
No.
Matter of fact, I remember when we first met, it was like, you know, we obviously, we liked each other and we talked on the phone. Back then, you know, there was no internet, you know, we used landline phones to talk, you know. There was no cell phones or anything. I mean, there were cell phones around, but they were really expensive. They weren't no smartphones or anything like that.
The calling cards were expensive too.
Yeah, we talked on the phone and, you know, and then we went out on dates, but there was no sex involved. No, the sex didn't come in, and we understood that didn't come in until you were married.
Right.
But I guess now that is so rare now that doesn't happen anymore. So what's happened now is our society has broken away from this system where
Purity.
Yeah, you wait until you're married to have sexual relationship.
Right.
And for some reason, I guess that's kind of gone out of vogue, which I say we need to go back to that now. Because that is actually the biblical position on everything, is the women that are to be married are virgin women. Matter of fact, you know, the parable of the 10 virgins is a prime example of that. You know, all the women there were virgins.
Right.
Okay, what happened to that day and age? You can't find 10 virgins to save your life now. But you see, that was the norm, and we need to get back to that norm in our culture and society now. But what's happened is we've perverted everything to where we skip the marriage part before having intercourse.
Right.
And now we wonder, well, why are we having all these problems? Because you're not doing things in the biblical way. My position is, and I know Sister Crystal here, you know, we've had some discussions and disagreements on this a little bit, but a woman only deserves a wedding if she's a virgin woman. Now, I know this may shock a lot of people, and this is my own position, and I know that I'm probably one of the only preachers that are going to say this. But biblically speaking, I can't find a marriage for a non-virgin woman unless she's a widow woman.
Yes.
Okay, now I'll just say that. If she's a widow woman, she deserves a wedding. If she's a virgin woman, she deserves a wedding. But all the other, and that's not very many women now. I've heard now that the rate of women who at the altar, when they're getting married, who are virgins now, it's down to 3%. So which means 97% of women that are getting married are not virgins. That is disturbing.
It's very unsettling to think that, and that this concept has become so outdated, and it shouldn't be. That is what I believe has saved a lot of people nowadays who are married for 25, 30 years because they were virgins when they got married. I have some friends and people that they credit that as being, and their faith in God as being why their marriages have stood the test of time. Because if you're pure to your future spouse, then you're not going to be looking to find someone while you're married, which is happening a lot. And your marriage will be founded on biblical principles that you will draw upon throughout your marriage. And you'll be grateful that you chose those and made those decisions.
Well, here's the way I kind of look at it. It's kind of similar to that. What it is if your woman was faithful to you before you got married, as in she kept her virginity and gave it to you as a gift for your wedding, then there's a high probability chance she's going to be faithful to you through that marriage. On the other hand, a woman who has not saved herself for marriage, well, how do we expect her to all of a sudden flip a switch and be faithful to you after marriage? See, this is why all this unfaithfulness and unchastity is going on, is because women are being an unpaid harlot before they get married, and then they wonder why there's an issue after they get married with staying faithful. Because women can't just flip a switch like that. It doesn't work that way. Women are designed to be chaste until married and are bound to their husband at that point for as long as she lives. That's the biblical way.
what I need to ask, and if there are any ladies listening, what do you gain when you sell yourself short? Yes, you might think you love someone and you think that's the proper way to show someone your love. That sex isn't just for pleasure, it also is for procreation. And we wouldn't have couples or young women being young mothers and all alone raising children if they just waited till they got married to have sex. And that's a personal preference, and I get that, but that's our preference, and that's what we think has been a blessing to our marriage and to other people's marriages. So that should come back, I believe. We should all be encouraging the young people today to practice purity before they get married.
Well, my position is, like I say, I'm very old school here. My position is very simple. You stay chaste until you're married. And I'm opposed to having sex before marriage, obviously.
Or living together.
Or anything. Matter of fact, I remember when my wife and I, we got ready to get married. Okay. I was living with my parents and she was living with her parents. I think that's the way you should do it before you get married. There's no reason to live on your own until you're getting married. Then you go and you live on your own. But what's happened now is that we don't do that anymore. And so I remember a month before we were married, I went and I got her an apartment and she stayed in the apartment while I still stayed and lived with my parents.
Right.
And then the first day I was able to live in that apartment with her is the day after we were married.
Right. Yeah. Well, we stayed a few nights in a hotel, but the meaning he didn't move his things in until after we were married. I was setting it up to our preference as our own little place together, but he didn't move in until we were married and we started living as husband and wife. All
the relationship advice you're getting is, you got to try out your spouse before you get married because you don't know if you're going to be compatible. You're not going to be compatible. As a matter of fact, I can flat out tell you right now, you're not going to be compatible because you're two different people and it's going to take some time for you to, you to mesh together to become one.
Well, there is friction with any couple living together. But why do you have to try that out? Know and go into it knowing you're different. Some people are slobs. Some people are not. Some people, are tidy and neat freaks. Some people are not. We have that in our own family with our children. But here's the thing. That is a part of marriage. That is a part of getting to know your spouse. Not opening that box of present before you get married to see if you are going to work. No, because you commit to that relationship and everything that unfolds after you get married. That's kind of like when you buy anything, you're going to sign the documentation that you're going to take that vehicle or house as is, where is, and you're going to sign that you're going to deal with everything that goes along with it. The car repairs, the house repairs, everything. And that's kind of what a marriage is you're going to go into that commitment and say, whatever happens in this marriage, we're going to work it out together. We're going to learn about each other. We're going to deal with everything in the marriage because we are both worth it.
Yeah, and I remember that first year of marriage. It wasn't easy. We argued like cats and dogs, and we were butting heads constantly. But we endured to the end. We kept going. That's exactly what you have to do. Anything that's worthwhile, you got to fight for.
Figure out your roles.
Yeah, and we were figuring out our roles, but we were butting heads a lot for the first few years of our marriage.
Well, I think the first 6 months were the toughest, but then things started really working out. And we started seeing how each other became our greatest asset and blessing. And we were able to, in our first year, conquer a debt that I had incurred before we were married. And working together to get that taken care of was a beautiful example of us focusing and tackling that situation, that object.
Yeah, so in other words, getting into this this question this guy has, my question for this is: was this woman a virgin woman when they got married? I have a high. There's probably a high chance that she wasn't. She didn't. They weren't. Didn't say. Source. If you violate any of these the protective barriers that God set up in relationships, you're going to have these things crop up. Okay. Women are not designed to be with multiple men. A death of a spouse, that's a whole different scenario, but a woman is designed to be with one man. I think it messes up her mental state when she has all these different men she's been with before she's been with you. So that's why her count has to be 0. That's why I'm saying if my wife passed away, to me to ever find anybody that would be what I would go for in a wife, it would be next to 0% chance I could find somebody like that. Because I would expect either a virgin woman, which there's not very many out there now, or a woman who's a widow woman, but then she'd have to submit to me as her head, her husband. And a lot of women, when they're out on their own or they've had that would be difficult. But I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that's why we need to keep to the biblical standards and forget about all these other things that the world's teaching us, because it messes up relationships when we go outside the bounds of the biblical order.
Right.
And this is, I think, what's kind of gone on here, why this woman went and cheated on her husband. If she wasn't ever with another man, the chance of her doing that would be a lot lower. And that's why I'm also opposed, if you can do it, for women not to go out and be sent out in the workforce.
Right.
And working. Women, I believe, need to be primarily stay-at-home moms. Okay? And that's why I'm against birth control, because women need to stay home and be having the babies for the next generation. Men, you know what your legacy is, folks? Your legacy is your children.
Right.
No one's going to care about all the stuff and the wealth you accumulated after your death, but your children will live on after you. And so that is your legacy right there.
I know it seems like an antiquated mindset to not have a woman go into the workforce. And did I have a job before? Well, I did, but I worked at a child care center where I was helping take care of other people's children. And then shortly after we got married, I became a nanny. So I was working for other people, taking care of their children in their home. So I didn't have my own children, yet I was a newly married woman, but I was caring for other people's children because that was my experience and expertise. And it gave me the opportunity to help a family, plus also earn a little income on the side. And I call those kind of side gigs, kind of like babysitting or house sitting or things like that. And I don't find, even house cleaning, I don't find those jobs too much into so much the workforce, as in they're your own kind of business.
Yeah, I mean, we know the day and age, you might have to have side gigs here and there in order to make ends meet. That's just the way that the society's set up right now. But definitely women's priority, and that's why I'm opposed to sex before marriage and birth control. No, the reason, when you're ready to get married, that means you're ready to have children right then.
Right.
And let God give you the children that he wants you to have.
When he wants you to have them.
When he wants you to have those children. He'll give you the exact number he wants you to have. No more, no less. You got to trust in God on this.
He opens and closes the womb for a reason.
Yeah, and you haven't seen, I had a 5-part series on the birth control deception, and that's what's going on in our society today.
Yes.
These women are not having children anymore. Why do you think they're dipping out on their husbands? Because they're not bearing children anymore, being stay-at-home moms, taking care of the household while the husband goes and works. This needs to be the way we need to get back. Now, I don't know the situation with this guy, but my guess is this woman was probably not a virgin woman when they got married, because it was so easy for her to just go from man to man. And this is what happens with promiscuous women before you get married. Women who are not promiscuous will stay loyal to you after you're married, because they've proven themselves before they got married that they are dedicated to you, even before you met, like my wife was.
There is something when someone can say no, not now, not until the time is right, or not ever until God calls them to that. When you can say no about sex and say, I feel and I know I need to stay pure, because in so doing, I am honoring God and my future, whoever I marry, and my future children. But I want to be able to make sure when my children, if they came to me and they asked me if I was a virgin, I really wanted to say yes, I was. Because I think all of our decisions that we make in life, they direct and guide us, and also the people that look at us or see us as an example.
Okay, let's move on with this guy's story here. Let's read the next area and see what's going on here. Okay, go ahead.
I've been engaged a few times over the years, never got married, simply because I was always fearful that remarriage might be a sin. Ultimately, it was a blurry area in the Bible that lingered in my mind. Basically, you run into two camps on this. First is that getting remarried while a spouse lives, oh, you're committing adultery and damned. Second, the camp is, oh, it's fine. Was a biblical divorce. And I know plenty of remarried couples involved in ministries and mission work.
Okay, so in other words, and it's true, I think that the church only has two positions. Now, I have a third position. You know me. Even with eschatology, I got a position other than most people do. I study the Word of God very carefully. And what people do is they like to add in or subtract from what the Bible actually states. Now, I'm gonna review these two camps that the church now teaches. Okay, first camp: divorce and remarriage is a sin, and if you commit that sin, it's a damnable. You're cast in the lake of fire, burning for all eternity in hell. That's the first camp. Matter of fact, that was the camp I was on for most. Believe it or not, that was the camp I was on for most of my marriage and most of my ministry here. But I've since looked carefully. And that's what you got to do. You got the details of God's word. You got to read them very carefully, okay? But then you'll have the other camp that'll be like, oh, no big deal. If she stepped out on you, just get remarried, whatever else. My positions, I believe there's a third position, which is what I hold on to, okay? And my position is kind of similar to, it's kind of a modifying of both of these positions here. Can a man get remarried after he's gotten divorced? Yes, he can, depending on the situation. Remember, in the Bible, a man could have multiple wives and not be considered adultery. Matter of fact, some of the holiest men in the Bible, and I even did a show on that, but you see, even like Abraham, considered to be our spiritual father in the Bible, he had a wife and he had a concubine at the same time. There was no sin involved with him having two wives.
Right.
As a matter of fact, he even had another wife, Keturah, later on, that he had a number of children with after Sarah died. We know for sure he had two women that he had as wives. Now, he was only married to one.
Right.
The other woman that he was not married to,
legally,
okay, Hagar, she was just his concubine, but she was considered to be a wife to Abraham.
A lower status wife.
That's why I say marriage is only for the virgin woman. If the woman is not a virgin, she deserves to be thrown into the concubine status. Let's say you fall in love with a woman, she's not a virgin. And this is a good situation for men today because most women aren't virgins. So what are you going to do? You're out there in the world. You're trying to find your virgin wife because that's what biblically the Bible teaches. But there's so few virgins out there. What do? All these women are out there. What about the ones that aren't virgins? Well, this is a situation where I throw them in the concubine status. They have already demoted themselves from a full wife that deserves a wedding to now, no, you're going to be a concubine and I'll make you my wife still, but you're going to be a concubine to me. And unfortunately, a lot of women don't like that, but they did it to themselves by not staying faithful to their husbands before they were married. Mary, the mother of Christ, she was a virgin woman when she had Jesus Christ. Even God expected purity, but what happens? We live in a fallen world. But we know in the past, even in the Bible, there were women that were not virgins. Rahab was a prostitute, okay? So which means that, yeah, was she a virgin? I seriously doubt it, Let's be honest here. How many prostitutes are virgins, And became a wife, probably a concubine, to somebody in the tribe of Judah, and then ended up being the ancestor to Jesus Christ.
Right.
So I'm not saying that you have to discard all these women. I'm just saying that they need to be classified in a lower status than a full wife. A full getting wedded woman. It's ridiculous that we have all these women that are getting married with these white dresses on and they've been promiscuous most of their lives before they got married. Why are you wearing a white wedding dress representing purity when you haven't been pure? To me, my position is if you're not a virgin woman or a widow woman, if you're not a virgin before you get married, you forfeited your right to a wedding. I'm not saying you can't wife that woman up. I'm just saying she doesn't deserve a wedding. A concubine is a woman that you take as a wife that you're not legally wedded to. And this is the position I think that we need to go to, especially in our 21st century messed up society now, is that we need to stop wedding these women that have been promiscuous because they haven't proven themselves to be pure before marriage. So why do we expect them to be pure after they get married? This is why I think a lot of cheating is going on these days, because women are so fixated on, getting the next high when it comes to sex or whatever, and they're not staying pure before they get married. How do you expect them to stay pure after? If you commit to a woman, guys, and you want to take that woman as your wife and not marry her, you stay committed to her, comes out of you. You need to be a man of your word to that woman. This is what I'm starting to say. You don't need to go have a wedding, but you need to be a man of your word. You take that woman as your wife, then you need to be a man of your word and keep her that way for the rest of your life. Okay, well, and the same thing holds true. No birth control. Get that woman having babies, and then she won't think about stepping out on you.
Well, it's both sides of the commitment. In the legality of our society, technically you don't have to get married. You can be married, and the common law marriage kind of takes place after so many years together. But I know a lot of people feel they need to have the seal of approval of a marriage. And some people, not necessarily in a church, some people who are religious or convicted to live godly want to be married in a church. And that's fine. I, for one, we've looked through all of these scenarios because, unfortunately, my mother divorced my father after 38 years of marriage. And my dad felt rejected, and just, it really shook his world.
It destroyed the man, honestly. Yes. I remember when this happened. We were married for how many years? Like 15, 20 years? Yeah. The whole point is, we were married for a while, and then this all transpires. And then, of course, it destroyed him, and he ended up getting remarried a few years later. And then, he ended up dying alone because his second wife then left him. And, we didn't even know about it because he was in another state. And the whole point is we didn't even know all this transpired, what was going on in his life. Right. Because it basically destroyed the man from within.
It really rocked his world and devastated him. And yes, he, like most desperate men, found a woman on the internet and thought, let's combine our lives together. We'll get married and we'll take care of each other. And that wasn't exactly the truth, because when he needed her and she had left him, and then he ended up dying alone, which was really not part of their agreement. But the idea is, I didn't find that it was wrong that he got married, because my mother had left him and he was a faithful husband all the years they were married. No reason for her to divorce him whatsoever. So I didn't have a problem with him getting remarried. I also didn't support the remarriage. I didn't go to the wedding. But that didn't mean I didn't love him. I was kind and polite to both of them when I met them or together. But there are reasons and there are circumstances involved in everyone's situation. But you have to pray about it. You have to research the scriptures and find, in your spirit, if that's what God wants you to do or not. And he will guide you.
Okay, so my position is this. It's really simple. If a man divorces his wife, he can't get remarried. But if the wife divorces him or cheats on him, okay, because basically, and I'm going to go into the scriptures that talk about this, if the wife either steps out on the marriage, which means she basically left him for another man, that's what that means. Mm-hmm. When a woman or a person steps out on the marriage and cheats on her husband, she's basically left him.
Right.
Okay, that's the same thing. It's the same as a divorce, really. It's really, biblically, it's the same thing. If a woman steps out on her husband or divorces him, he can remarry. But if the man then divorces his wife, he cannot remarry.
Right.
So that's my position on it. Only time a man can remarry is if either the wife divorces him or cheats on him and steps out on him.
Or if she dies.
Or if she dies, obviously. But those are the only conditions. So, but today's day and age, 80% of divorces are instigated by the wives now. And so a lot of these husbands are kind of wondering, or or the wives are just like this situation, the wife stepped out on her husband, so she essentially left the marriage to be with another man. Well, that would be a situation where you're no longer unified as one now. So as a result, yes, could you get remarried? Yeah, because a man can have multiple wives and not be considered adult. Putting that out there. And I have biblical proof that proves this. So that's my position. Now, women, on the other hand, it's a little different for them. Women can never remarry after, if they've ever been divorced, even if it's not their fault. This is unfortunate, but this is the biblical proof text.
Right.
Okay? In other words, even if a man steps out on his wife and she divorces him because of infidelity or whatever, that woman cannot remarry. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not trying to say this. I'm just saying this is what the Bible actually teaches. But typically, what we've seen now in our 21st century society is that this is not happening as much as women dipping out on their husbands.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more women getting, I don't like my husband anymore. I'm going to find a better guy, find somebody else, or they'll just do it behind his back and cheat on him. That's what's been going on with women.
Their cake and eat it too.
Yeah. And so, yes, those women can never remarry biblically. So these women that are doing this today, all they are is condemning themselves to judgment from the Lord by doing this kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to talk to the men now. Men, you need to be staying faithful to your wives. That's why throwing away the birth control, staying faithful to that woman for the rest of your life, being a man of your word is the key thing. You do not let your woman, whoever it is that belongs to you, because women belong to their husbands, it's not the other way around. You need to stay faithful to that woman. And that's why I said to my woman, and that's my wife here, woman and wife, same word, okay? She's my woman, but I gave her my word that I would stay faithful to her all my life, and that's what I've done, 30 years now. And you just have to be a person of your word. But what's happened is we live in a society where our word doesn't mean anything. We will make vows. That's why a woman should not get married if she hasn't kept her vow to stay chaste before they got married. Okay, this is why I'm against marriage for promiscuous women prior to marriage. Only women that deserve a wedding are the ones that have stayed faithful to their husbands before they got married, and are virgin women. That's the way it used to be, and that's the way we need to get back to. Okay, let's continue on and read the last little bit of this thing. We're kind of going along.
My question is, what should I do? For a while now, I've been intentionally remained single and celibate, which has essentially made me a pariah in most church settings to my family. But I isolate myself from dating excessive because until recently, when I discovered this little season's eschatology, I was thinking, we are in the last days. Christ is returning any moment now. And I didn't want to be excluded from the kingdom of heaven for being adulterous or fornicating via remarriage. If I was wrong about this blurry issue. So despite having an okay job, owning a 3-bedroom house, I just avoid relationships and tell people do not try setting me up or I'll get mad. I never give a reason because so many people I know are remarried after divorce. I don't want to make them think I'm trying to be better than them or condemn them.
Okay, so what this guy's doing, he's trying to be faithful to his spouse. Unfortunately, she never was faithful to him. So essentially, this I wouldn't say get remarried, because honestly, at his age now, and it's kind of sounding like this guy is maybe in his early 40s, maybe. I don't know, maybe late 30s, early 40s is my guess, is this guy's age. He basically, it's going to be hard for him to find a woman. Remember, my rule of thumb, if she's not a virgin or a widow woman, she does not get a wedding. Okay? So in other words, who's he going to find who's a 40-year-old, around that age, virgin woman? Probably not too many of them. Or a widow woman at that age. Maybe a few more of them.
30-something.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, he's probably in the pool of promiscuous women that now need to find a provider husband.
Well,
okay?
Here's the thought. He has this conviction. And it's not that he's remaining faithful to his wife. I think this is a conviction that he doesn't want to get into a remarriage if it's something that God says in his word is wrong. I appreciate what he's doing. I appreciate his decision to be celibate, because he takes this very seriously. If we could only have more people who take their decisions for their future and their faith seriously. You know, I know that if it's his desire to get remarried and God wants him to get remarried, he will put a woman in this man's life. I believe that. I believe that all those circumstances, God does that. If you have a desire and it seemed like things weren't quite fair or went the way you wanted to, I believe God gives second chances. However, God has to do it. The Bible says that man should not seek a wife. So I think, and what happened, we just it all fell together. We weren't really looking for each other, and it just God put us at the same place at the same time. I believe God can do that for anyone who's struggling with this. And the situation has to be like that perfect situation. But God can do that. Because I believe he does want godly couples. Now, this address to this concern that there are people in the church who are remarried. And I see that a lot. And we know of people in our family members who are remarried and living in the church and by faith, supposedly, because, it's okay that I remarry because my first spouse, one of them was a widow and the other was divorced. But still, that to us was not something, and his wife did leave him, but he knew she wasn't a believer and he wasn't practicing his faith anyway. So now that he's practicing his faith, he's saying that the marriage is legit. However, every decision we make, we have to understand that we can be judged for all of those decisions. And are we willing to be judged on those decisions we make?
Yeah, we had a guy in our church once that was almost the same situation as this guy right here.
Yeah.
That he was coming here, his wife had left him, and basically he didn't want a divorce. Matter of fact, he refused to sign the divorce papers. I remember him saying that, basically, and she ended up getting divorced without him even signing divorce papers. He was just saying, no, I've refused to divorce you. And she ended up getting a divorce anyway without his signature and everything through the courts. I don't know how they do all that. But the whole point is he felt the same way this guy did. He I don't know if he's still married today because he ended up moving out of state from where we were at.
Being closer to her and his daughter.
Being closer to his family and all that. And we get letters from him every once in a while, but I've asked him how everything's going with his personal life. The point is like, this is a real issue because my standards are so strict with women, okay? If I were in a situation with this guy, okay? Because it's really, to me, the majority of women hit the age that he would be looking at dating to get into another relationship would be previous promiscuous women. And what I mean by that is women who have not saved themselves for marriage, and so they've had a body count of who knows what, okay? That's the problem right now because you can't guarantee if they haven't been faithful to you before they got married, there's a good chance they're not going to be faithful to you after they get married. I'm not saying that's always the case, but this is why we're having our societal breakdown right now. His best chance is to get a concubine. Now, we don't like that word today, and it's not a word we commonly use, but I like the word because it's a lower status wife. And this is what basically these men can do who are looking to be in a relationship, maybe looking to build their families because, hey, maybe they had a wife that was promiscuous and never gave them any children or whatever. And they feel convicted to have a family. Well, how many women now are going to be willing to no birth control? If you become my wife, if you become my concubine, we're just going to have as many children as God wants us to have. Now, if you can find a woman like that, in this day and age, she might be a good one for you. But what I'm saying is like, but this is why I probably could never find one like that. You know?
The idea is having a person who is like your wife and you're committed to each other. And you can even have your own little kind of commitment, handwritten commitment that you write up. But it's between the two of you. And in actuality, relationships are really between the two people and God. And that's kind of back in the day, they would record those marriages in the Bible. And that was the only documentation that they would have is as they record the marriages. the idea and the reason why my husband is so staunch about this is because so often we have people that go into these commitments and marriages, and one does not fulfill their commitment, and it leaves the other person shorthanded and feeling kind of robbed or felt like they were gypped.
Well, the satanic forces are attacking marriage right and left these days. We know that.
Right.
You know, and this poor guy, you know, he's a victim of our societal pressures. These women are not staying faithful to their spouses before they get married. So when they get married, they want their wedding and they want their special day. This is why I'm saying don't give a woman that's promiscuous their special day, because then you'll see if they're really faithful to you or not.
But if a woman wants to be taken care of and provide and care for children and be the wife of the, you know, to the woman to this man, which is like a wife, you can do that. It's not, God never looked down upon men that had concubines.
That's right.
And so it's
even King David, a man after God's own heart, had concubines. I'm just trying to put these things out so you understand that there's no sin in this, but it's a woman of lower status.
Well, so the reason why my husband has these convictions, or we have these convictions, is we have seen the biggest issue and seen it in Scripture. What is Jesus' major commandment? Love one another. And we have seen countless times in relationships where people have been downright mean, hurtful, just hurting the person they say they love. And that is not how we treat people when we say we love them or love them at one time. And so it is our conduct as Christians and believers on how we treat one another.
As a matter of fact, that's all what sin is, really. Sin is basically how you're treating your neighbor or how you're treating another person. Now, see, that's why I'm saying I don't think this guy going into another relationship would be a sin, because he's not treating his wife, because that's what would happen if he would do it while he was still married. Like, hey, honey, I'm divorcing you. I found a better woman for you. That kind of thing. That would hurt her at that time. But see, since she already left the relationship, then he's not hurting anybody. He's not hurting anybody else.
He's already been rejected.
So he hasn't been violating any command of the Bible to love one another, because he's not violating that command.
Right.
She's the one that violated the command to not love her husband and treat him with respect that he deserves. And this is very common these days in what's going on in society. So you have to look at, that's all sin is. Sin is violating and harming another person. So by him getting another relationship, that wouldn't be harming her at all, because this is all ancient history. I suggest no remarriage unless some virgin woman would come your way and she would want to become your wife and then bear all your children and all that. See, I'm against these people that go into marriage without wanting to have children. I'm also opposed to that too, because marriage is specifically for having godly offspring. The Bible actually teaches that. The last thing he says here, and this is real-time issue for people in my generation. He's an older millennial. That's why I said probably early 40s, maybe late 30s. But, most of us are divorced, at least in my area and demographics. Yeah, that's because society has convinced you to get divorced in that way.
Or that's just the course of the age range in which you are, because we have seen a lot of, at least 10 years of our age, 10 years from our age, of people who are divorced and remarried or just divorced. It's a really difficult lifestyle, and it's not what most people want. I think most people have thought they would be one and done and they'd have a great marriage, and then somehow one of the two people in the marriage has decided, no, this isn't for me, I want out.
And that's why our whole society's broken now. I'm trying to get people back to the biblical standard is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm trying to teach. But right now, our society, that's why my wife and I were kind of last of the old guard here. We saved ourselves for marriage. We stayed faithful to each other throughout our marriage. We had many children as God wanted us to have. And we really only had 8. Well, my wife was pregnant many times, and we lost a lot of children. I'm saying we've even lost a lot. My wife's had many miscarriages. I haven't really talked about this on this show. We've had more deaths of children than we have live living births. And I don't want to make her cry or anything, because then when I bring that up, it's heartbreaking. The satanic forces have really attacked our family on a spiritual level because I'm speaking all this, okay? And anytime you start doing things God's way, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get attacked right and left. Boom, 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 boom. And so you have to be willing to just suck it up and take one for the team.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we had to do. So in other words, my position is have as many children as God wants you to have. My wife's a stay-at-home mom. She takes care of the kids, and she's going to continue to take care of those kids forever. When those kids start getting married, she's going to help be the grandmother and help raise the next generation up, and that's going to be her job coming up. We don't have any grandchildren yet, but because we don't have any married children yet.
No, but what we are doing is we are training our children up in the Lord, and we are encouraging and guiding our children to remain truthful to the standards set in the Word of God and to live righteous lives, and their decisions matter even before they get married or before their future comes their way. We are trying to set our children up for success. So often you hear, I'm going to set my child up for success for school. Well, how many parents actually set their children up for spiritual success, for righteous living success in a godly marriage, in a family that is going to be a good foundation to teach and reach other people and have generation after generation sold out for the Lord? How many parents are doing that? How many young people are going to say, I am not going to be sleeping around. I'm going to be a virgin and I'm going to be pure. And then when I get married, I'm going to raise my children the same way I've been living. We have more people standing up and living like that. We can turn all of this around. We are raising godly children, sons and daughters, and at the current state that they are at their ages, they're all virgins, and they all want to be married one day, and we are encouraging them to stay pure so that they have a great but a great start at a healthy, godly marriage.
Right, and so by them staying faithful to their spouse before they got married, it's going to be highly probable that they're going to be faithful to their spouse after they get married because they've proven their faithfulness before.
Right.
So, that's what we teach. My position's a little slightly different than most people that preach at churches.
Yeah.
Because I have this third idea, and right now in our society today, we have a big problem with promiscuous women, and I really focus on the women because I think men should be faithful too. But
yes,
but the whole point is that my focus is on promiscuous women because they're the ones that bear the children for the next generations, and the satanic forces have really attacked the weaker sex here, which means women, to convince them, oh, you don't have to remain faithful to your spouse before you get married. Go have fun. Go enjoy life. Sow your wild oats. And then what you're doing is all you are is ensuring that you're not going to remain faithful to your spouse after you get married. Because to me, promiscuity messes up a woman's brain.
Yes.
It does something to her mental state that I can't explain exactly, and I don't understand it, but it does something to her psyche that it makes it harder for her to remain faithful to her spouse after. And so that's why they get bored of their marriage. They want to get divorced. Oh, I'm so tired of my husband. I want to divorce him. Or what they'll do is they'll just step out on their husband by cheating on him because they'll get bored in their marriage. Why are you getting bored in your marriage when you should be bearing children and staying busy at home?
Well, there is something to being a keeper at home and not being out in the workforce, where we have heard countless stories of women who are in the workforce and they actually sleep with their boss.
Or a coworker. Matter of fact, that's the number one cause of infidelity is coworkers. People, they could, because they're around them all day, they kind of get a relationship with them, and then, they start to get feelings for them, and the next thing there's infidelity going on.
Is an extra income really worth that? That's what my question is, because we have lived in our marriage. I've only had some side jobs early on, but since the kids started coming, I was a stay-at-home mom on a one income. And yes, it made it tough sometimes.
It's harder today, I'll admit that. So I'm saying that there might be some options for women if they could stay home, have side gigs or whatever. And it's hard these days. The satanic forces have really made it hard for a one income to support a family these days. It's just really difficult. But I think my wife and I are coming up with solutions that we are going to announce here soon about how maybe some things you can do to ensure the next generations won't be running into this problem. And so we're not ready to reveal that right now, but we're going to reveal that later on in our show of what we've come up with, solutions that we've come up with that allow us to be able to roll into the next generations and not have to worry about all this mess that the culture is set up against us. Because we live in a very dark, deceptive age, but we must be vigilant. We must be manly. We must be fortified, standing firm in the faith, doing everything out of love, not only because it's biblical.
Because it glorifies God.
Join or contact us at satanslowseason.org. This is a non-copyrighted Living in Satan's Low Season production.